So what actually happens when your blood turns into literal syrup? Well, you essentially become a vegetable. Your organs get starved, your nerves get totally fried. It's, quite frankly, a complete metabolic disaster. But hey, today we're gonna fix that. Welcome back to Confused Neuron. I am so incredibly pumped for this explainer because today we are taking the massive, honestly kind of intimidating world of diabetes mellitus pharmacology and we are completely decoding it. I promise you, by the time we wrap this up, the medicine, the pathophysiology, the whole shebang, it's all gonna make perfect sense.
Our core mission here is simple: learn, understand, and remember. We are about to unconfuse your neurons, grabbing our trusty virtual whiteboard marker to make it happen. We'll be using some high-contrast setups, killer mnemonics, and maybe a joke or two so this stuff actually sticks in your brain. So get focused, and let's get into it. All right, here is our whiteboard master plan for today. 1. The sweet crime scene. 2. Type 1 versus type 2. 3. The insulin arsenal. 4. Oral hypoglycemics. 5. Red flags and side effects. And finally, 6. The treatment algorithm. Let's get systematically unconfused. Section 1. The sweet crime scene, defining the disease.
First things first, let's head straight to the scene of the crime to see what's actually going wrong. The absolute crux of it is this. Diabetes mellitus is a metabolic disorder where you've got dangerously elevated blood glucose. And why is it so high? Well, it's due to either a relative or an absolute lack of insulin. Now, the symptoms here are absolutely crucial. Let me highlight these classic signs so you literally never forget them. We've got polyuria, which is excessive urination, polydipsia, meaning excessive thirst, polyphagia, excessive hunger, and then weight loss. See, when insulin is missing, your body is essentially starving in a sea of plenty. Your cells can't access the glucose, so they're crying out for food, hence the crazy hunger, while your kidneys are working overtime to flush all that thick syrup away, which gives you the constant urination. Section 2. Type 1 versus Type 2. The two culprits. Okay, so we know the crime. Now let's identify our culprits. Get ready for a direct side-by-side comparison here on the board. Over on the left, we've got type 1 diabetes. This is an autoimmune destruction of the pancreatic beta cells. It leaves you with an absolute lack of insulin, and it typically shows up in youth. Basically, the insulin factory has burned down to the ground. Then, on the right, we have type 2 diabetes. Here, the factory is actually still standing, but the locks on the body cells, they're completely jammed. This is what we call insulin resistance, leading to a relative lack of insulin. It actually makes up over 90% of cases and is strongly tied to obesity and adult onset. So to recap, type 1 is the structural destruction of those beta cells, while type 2 is a functional resistance. Section 3, the insulin arsenal, exogenous reinforcements. Right, so the beta cells are either totally down or they are struggling hard. It's time to call in the exogenous reinforcements. You can consider this your ultimate clinical cheat sheet. On the left side, we have our rapid and short actors. We're talking Lispro, Aspart, and regular insulin. These guys act in literal minutes to cover those massive glucose spikes during mealtimes. Moving to the middle, we have the intermediate NPH, which gives you this cloudy, much slower release. And on the right, the long-acting basals, glargine, detamir, and degludec. This setup is brilliant because it mimics the human body's natural rhythms. Degludec, for example, anchors that basal control with a massive half-life, giving the patient a steady, smooth baseline without any dangerous peaks. But hey, listen to me carefully here. While insulin absolutely saves lives, it brings some massive red flags. The scariest one? Hypoglycemia. If you give a patient too much insulin, they are going to present with tachycardia, confusion, and diaphoresis. Basically, they'll be sweating and shaking. It also notoriously causes weight gain. And please notice this crucial final point: lipodystrophy. If your patients don't rotate their injection sites, they're going to develop these really strange, localized fat deposits. Always remind patients to rotate those sites. Section 4. Oral hypoglycemic heroes, the pill battalion. Now, for our type 2 patients, we don't always want to jump straight to the injections. We usually start with the frontline pills. Let's focus on our first hero here, metformin, which is a big guanide. Its main gig? It reduces hepatic gluconeogenesis. It literally tells the liver to just stop making so much glucose. Next up, the sulfonylureas, like glipizide and glyburide. These agents aggressively squeeze the pancreas to stimulate more of that beta cell insulin release. Then we've got the TZDs, like pioglitazone. These work by increasing peripheral insulin sensitivity. They basically activate specific receptors in the fat and muscle tissues. And finally, the SGLT2 inhibitors, like canagliflozin.
These actually block glucose reabsorption right in the kidneys, which forces the body to just dump the excess sugar.
Section 5. Red flags and side effects. The danger zone.
Look, I know pharmacology can be incredibly tough. It's a ton of pathways, a ton of rules, but I promise you, with a few quirky mnemonics and a bit of humor, we're going to make these side effects completely unforgettable. Welcome to the danger zone. Let's kick it off with metformin. I want you to think of it as your meta friend. It's the first-line drug, it helps with weight loss, it is a great friend. But your meta friend absolutely hates your GI tract. It notoriously causes diarrhea and nausea. And even more importantly, your meta friend fears lactic acidosis like the absolute plague. Because of this severe risk, it is strictly, and I mean absolutely strictly, contraindicated in patients with severe renal dysfunction. Do not give this if those kidneys are failing.
Next on the chopping block, sulfonylureas. Remember, they stimulate insulin release. But think about it. If you squeeze that pancreas too hard, what happens? You end up with severe hypoglycemia and weight gain. All right, what about the TZDs? The drugs ending in zone, like pioglitazone? My friends, welcome to the danger zone. These zone drugs cause massive fluid retention, which can seriously exacerbate heart failure, and they even bump up the risk of bone fractures. So, if a patient has severe heart failure, stay out of the zone.
And oh man, I absolutely love this next mnemonic. Look at the SGLT2 inhibitors, the ones ending in flozin. Gliflozin makes the glucose flow out in the urine, get it? But here's the catch. What happens when sugar flows through the urinary tract? Bacteria and fungi have an absolute feast. So it causes UTIs and genital mycotic infections. Next, the GLP-1 agonists, which end in tide, like exenatide. They turn the tide on weight by causing early satiety, so you feel full earlier. But that slowing of the gut, it causes nausea, and there's a rare but super serious risk of pancreatitis. Just remember to say what you write and write what you say. Gliflozin makes it flow, and tide turns the tide.
Section 6. The treatment algorithm, the battle plan.
Okay, take a deep breath. How do we actually use all these medications in the real world? Let's calm the pace down just a little bit and organize all of this chaotic pharmacology into one clear, chronological, clinical action plan. Here is your step-by-step battle plan for type 2 diabetes. Step 1. You always start with lifestyle modifications. So diet and exercise, plus our meta-friend, metformin. Now, if their A1C is still not at our target goal after 3 months, we escalate things to step 2. This is where the physician adds a second agent, maybe a sulfonylurea, an SGLT2 inhibitor, or a GLP-1 agonist, or they might even start a single shot of long-acting basal insulin. If the disease keeps progressing and the pancreas just keeps tiring out, we finally move to step 3, which is full insulin replacement with a basal bolus regimen. That means one long-acting shot for the baseline and rapid shots for every single meal.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a provocative clinical puzzle. Imagine your patient is waking up highly hyperglycemic. Why? Is it the dawn phenomenon, which, is that natural early morning release of growth hormone and cortisol that naturally spikes blood sugar? Or is it the Somogyi effect, which is a rebound hyperglycemia because you gave them way too much insulin the night before and their blood sugar completely crashed in their sleep? How do you actually figure it out? Well, it's simple. You check their blood glucose at 3 a.m. If it's high or normal at 3 a.m., boom, it's the dawn phenomenon. If it's rock bottom low at 3 a.m., it's the Somogyi effect. Think about that for a second. If this explainer unconfused your neurons today, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Confused Neuron. Keep learning, keep understanding, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.